We're loving and hating and making scenes. Now we just see everything we believe.
Hello, what's going on, YouTube fam? This is your boy J Money here, and I'm bringing you guys a little series for people that are returning to the game, returning players that more specifically have been out of the game or left the game pre-Master Rule 4, or right when Master Rule 4 took effect, because a lot of people, myself included on some of these, didn't really care for the link mechanic and was all, kind of had a bad taste in a lot of our mouths regarding how we're forced to play these monsters to play our old decks how we want to play them. And, that didn't bode too well at the beginning, However, the reason why I'm making this video is because, I've taken note that there are a lot more players playing. There's a lot more players competing, and a lot of attendance records are being broken, not just on the YCS level, but on the regional level as well, to where records are being broken and people are being turned away because, these regionals have reached their player cap, and there's just been a lot of cases to where there's just been a lot more people than they expect to show up to these events. So I decided that, for if you're a returning player, these are the kind of videos you would need to watch in case you guys haven't been fully caught up yet. Now, I'm going to break this into multiple different parts. The first part is going to be what I'm going to do today and on the next video, and that's the staples, because there's a lot of newly introduced cards since Master Rule 4 that are seeing a lot of play. And there's a lot of them, so I might have to break this up into 2 separate videos. So that's the first part. The second part is going to be just the changes in the ban list and why things are on the list. Why are certain cards on the list ever since Master Rule 4's inception. So all the ban list changes. Not necessarily going to talk about, the cards that got unlimited or unrestricted, but kind of the ones that got restricted or got put on the list, got limited, got banned, things like that. And then the next one I'm going to talk about, I guess, would be, the progression of the meta. And so that will be really something to look forward to. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start part 1 of this segment, being the staples. Now, we're going to start this off in chronological order. From Code of the Duelist, the very first set that truly introduced links into the game. Now, there are 2 noteworthy cards in here. The first one being Heavy Storm Duster. Heavy Storm Duster essentially is been seeing play in and out of formats ever since links began. And if you read the card, it's honestly no different from Twin Twisters, except it's cost free. Now, note, it is a trap card, so you do have to set it. However, if you are playing decks that do set cards, this is one of the cards that you really might consider playing, especially when you have decks that do set a lot of back row, even in today's time, at the time of recording this video. Decks like Sky Striker, Salamangreat, Subterra Guru Control, Altergeist, the whole 9 yards. There's a lot of decks that are setting a lot of back row. And so, yes, you may not be able to conduct your battle phase, but 9 times out of 10 you are flipping this card over during your opponent's end phase after they set their cards. So that drawback of not having a battle phase doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Next, we have the second card, and it's not really too much of a staple, but it is something you need to keep note of. And before I continue, all of these staples, quote-unquote staples, that I'm going to cover in these 2 videos are going to be, both budget and non-budget. The more expensive cards. These are cards that everybody should just be aware of. Now, the second card in Code of the Duelist is actually going to be Rescue Ferrand. Now, it's not seeing as much play, but, reading the card and its effects, at any time this card can really come up and can really break some things wide open, because its effect is pretty insane if you read it. It does have a lot of drawbacks, keep that in mind, but if you resolve its effect, you can, on average, you're summoning 3 monsters from the deck whose total levels equal 6 to link zones. They have to specifically go to link zones, and the total level of monsters have to add up to specifically level 6. So you can summon 2 level 3s, 3 level 2s, a level 2, a level 1, and a level 3, or just a 2 and a 4. There's a lot of different combinations. Their effects are negated, but 9 times out of 10, the monsters you summon out of the deck either are going to have a tuner status on one of them, or they'll all get some sort of grave effects. So the card gets pretty ridiculous really fast, especially in tandem with another card that's going to be on this list. And granted, it's, on paper, it may seem really good, but in applications, Rescue Rabbit and Rescue Cat are still better cards, because unlike Ferret, Cat and Rabbit are actual starter cards, and the ability to just be able to activate the effects immediately at the start of your turn has always been huge. Next set, we're going on to Circuit Break. There are also 2 cards in this set that need to be taken note of. The first one is actually a trap card called Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched is seeing a ton of play right now, and so I decided to cover this first. Evenly Matched essentially is a trap card that 9 times out of 10 people will choose to activate from the hand. When this card resolves, it'll force you, the player, if your opponent is playing this against you, it will force you to banish cards on your field face down until you control the same number of cards as they do. And so, on average, you will keep 1 card on the field, but the rest of your cards will get banished face down, which is really potent, because any card that gets their effects when they get banished don't activate because they're face down. So normally what people will do is they will draw for turn, enter standby phase, enter main phase 1. They'll skip their main phase 1, they'll go straight to the battle phase. The moment somebody goes straight to the battle phase, you already know what they're going to have in their hand, because this is the only card that people will skip their entire main phase for. And so when they enter battle phase, just expect this card to be played. And so you do need to be prepared for a card like this, in the form of things like either Mind Crush to call Evenly Matched, or have an artifact Lancia or something in your hand to stop this card, a wiretap, anything to just kind of negate the card. Next one is Bora Load Dragon. Bora Load is a Link 4. It does require 3 monsters minimum to make, and they have to be effect monsters, so keep that in mind. So it's not, the most generic card to make, requiring 3 different monsters. Now, Bora Load Dragon has amazing arrows, it has amazing stats, but its effects are what make it worth playing. Being able to essentially steal a monster and to a link zone he's pointing to on attack declaration, or at the start of damage, whatnot. I forget when the effect activates, but that's huge. Being able to not target and not destroy, you're not necessarily removing the monster, but you are getting it out of the way, and you can attack with that monster and use its effects as well. That's some pretty serious stuff. And the card can't be targeted by monster effects, which is also really worth noting, simply for the fact that a lot of monsters in this game do target. So not only can you target this card, but if it attacks, it steals monsters. It doesn't target, it doesn't destroy. At the end of the next turn, the monster will be sent to the graveyard. Also, it does have another effect to where, as a quick effect, you can target any monster on the field and reduce its attack by 500. And your opponent cannot respond to that effect. So that's also something worth noting. Now let's go ahead and move on to Extreme Force. Extreme Force is, you know, one of those sets to where links really started kicking in, really started going into overdrive per se. Now, the first card we're going to talk about is arguably the best card in Extreme Force, Yugioh Scold. Yugioh Scold is a Link 4, as you can see on the screen. It does have 4 effects, and it gets many different effects depending on how many monsters with different names you use to make this card. And you can use all of their effects, and none of their effects are hard once per turns, which means if you can make a second or third copy of this card, you can reuse all of its effects multiple times. And that's pretty huge. So anyway, if you link summon this with 2 monsters, which in order to link summon it, you need to take at least 2 monsters anyway. Any monster summoned to its zone automatically gains 300 attack and defense points. That part is an activation effect, and it's mandatory, so it does leave itself vulnerable to cards like Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So that's something to note. But if you use this card with at least 3 materials with different names, then once per turn you can special summon a monster from your hand. That comes up a lot, especially after you've invested a lot of resources into making this card. Not too much to talk about that. Next, the third effect, if it's used with 4 monsters with different names, you get to draw 4 cards and then choose any 3 cards from your hand and place them to the bottom of the deck. That effect is huge. It allows you to, you know, mulligan per se and dig through your deck for key pieces. You know, it's a wonder why this card's good, but you know, if you guys have looked at the recent ban lists, you can kind of scratch your head a little bit and wonder how people can easily summon multiple copies of these with all the token generators consistently being hit on the ban list. You know, it seemed like some real hard investments, and that's what's going to go on in the next couple of videos. That's enough for Yugioh Scold. Next, we got to look at a card like Isolde, Two Tails of the Noble Knights, because this card sees a lot of play in a lot of decks that consist of a lot of warrior monsters. Because of the fact that this monster here, if you are throwing in a certain number of equip spells in your deck, you can summon any warrior monster from your deck, and not only that, but on summon you can add a warrior monster from your deck to your hand, but you can't summon that monster or use its effects, you know, for that name, just that name in general, not that card, but that name. So if you add a certain card, the other copies in your deck cannot be summoned either. But its second effect allows you to send a number of equip spells from your deck to the graveyard, so you can foolish any number of spell cards and summon a warrior monster from the deck that has a matching level of the number of equip spells that you foolished to the graveyard. And that's huge. So when you have cards like Armageddon Knight that can send dark monsters to the graveyard, you know, you're looking at some pretty insane things already. You know, pretty good combos. Things like Hero Kit that can summon 2 more Hero Kits from the deck. You know, at this point, you know, you can see plays are about to get wild. So what people do is if you have a key monster you want to summon from the deck, you would play, like, let's say Armageddon Knight, it's a level 4. You need to send 4 equip spells, but normally people will play 5 equip spells, because if they open one, then the effect is still live. So that is something you need to look out for. And if you plan to play a warrior deck, like let's say 6 Samurai, Isolde is something you definitely want to have. Next, we have just a simple card in Extreme Force, Rune Aid. Rune Aid is, you know, honestly, you know, it's very straightforward. It's like a giant grenade, but a little bit worse. When you activate it, you return all set spells and trap cards to the hand from the field. So, you know, if your opponent has a set Rivalry of Warlords or any continuous card and they flip it over, it will not be returned to the hand. That's something that is worth noting. Alright guys, that is going to wrap it up for part 1 of the staple part of the video. Now, this took a little bit of time, but again, this goes to show you how many cards are actually seen play and cards that you should be aware of when you're building a certain deck as well. Again, this is for staples and non-staples. So, you know, we still have Flames of Destruction. We still have cards from Dark Saviors. We still have cards from Shadows in Valhalla. We have Cybernetic Horizon still. Soul Fusion. And I believe... Oh, yes. A Legendary Hero decks as well. And we still have... what's its name? We still have... Savage Strike. Yes, that's correct. So... Luckily, there's a lot of, these are a lot of, like, group-based cards, so even though the next video will cover a lot more cards, I can go through them a lot faster. So, let me know what you guys think about this part 1. Again, this is for people that are returning to the game post-Master Roll 4 and all that, and so I believe that these are some cards that everybody needs to have on the radars, everybody needs to consider playing, etc., etc. So, with that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you guys very much for watching. This is J Money, and I am signing out.